Every great invention needs power to function. Cars need fuel, cities need electricity, and lives need an invisible force that ignites purpose and influence. But what if I told you that the greatest power source isn't outside of you, it's within? Today, we're unlocking that power so you can rise, lead, and impact the world like never before. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever felt like there's more to you than what people see? Like there's something inside you, untapped, unexplored, and waiting to be released? What if I told you there's not just a feeling, it's a reality? Every invention, every great movement, every powerful transformation was fueled by something beyond what the eye could see. Planes don't fly without thrust. Cars don't move without an engine, and cities don't shine without electricity. The same is true for you. You were not designed to function on human ability alone. There is a force inside of you, a power so strong, so transformative, that when activated, it changes everything. Now here's the challenge. Most people live their entire lives never unlocking it. They go through the motions, they follow routines, they settle for what's comfortable, and they accept limitations that were never meant to define them. They let fear dictate their choices, let doubt rob them of their dreams, and let circumstances control their destiny. But that's not how you were designed to live. You were created to operate with an unseen advantage, a force that gives you wisdom beyond your years, courage beyond your fears, and strength beyond your struggles. It's the power that turns ordinary men and women into world changers, visionaries, and history makers. It's the difference between those who simply exist and those who live with impact. But here's the real question. How do you access it? How do you go from knowing this power exists to actually experiencing it? The answer is simple yet profound. It begins with recognition. You must first acknowledge that you were designed for more. You must break free from small thinking, from limiting beliefs, from the idea that your past, your failures, or your current situation can define your future. The moment you recognize that there is something greater within you, the journey begins. But recognition alone is not enough. You must take action. You must step into an environment that fuels this power, that awakens your potential, that challenges you to grow. Because power is never activated in comfort. You cannot stay where you are and expect to see a new version of yourself. The moment you decide to step beyond fear, beyond doubt, and beyond the limitations of what you think you can do, that's the moment the power begins to move. And when it moves, everything changes. Your mindset shifts. Your confidence rises. Your vision expands. You begin to do things you never thought possible, make decisions with clarity, and walk with an authority that cannot be ignored. You don't just survive. You don't just follow. You lead. But this is just the beginning. Because once you unlock this power, the next step is learning how to use it. How do you walk in boldness? How do you sustain this momentum? How do you ensure that this power doesn't just spark for a moment, but burns for a lifetime? Well, let's talk about that, because the next step is the key to living beyond limits. Let me ask you a question. What separates those who merely exist from those who leave a lasting impact? Why do some people rise above challenges while others crumble under pressure? Is it talent? Is it luck? Is it connections? No, it's something greater. It's an invisible force that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary leaders, innovators, and world changers. And here's the truth. You already have this power within you. But having power and using power are two different things. Electricity is present in a house, But until you flip the switch, the lights stay off. A car has an engine, but until you turn the key, it goes nowhere. The question is, have you activated what's inside of you? Most people live their entire lives without ever tapping into their true potential. They settle for mediocrity. They listen to the voices of doubt. They accept failure as final. But extraordinary people, they operate differently. They understand that the greatest power doesn't come from external sources. It comes from within. Think about it. History was not shaped by people who played it safe. Every movement, every breakthrough, every innovation was driven by individuals who dared to step beyond the ordinary. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for the right time. They simply activated the power within them, and the world had no choice but to take notice. But let's get real. Why do so many people struggle to access this power? It's because they are waiting for a feeling. They think power comes when everything is perfect, when fear disappears, when conditions are favorable, but that's not how it works. Power is activated through decision. It's a choice to think differently, to speak differently, to move differently. It's a commitment to refuse smallness, to reject complacency, and to step into something greater. And here's the beautiful part. Once you begin to operate in this power, everything around you responds. Your mindset shifts. Your confidence grows. Your influence expands. You start attracting opportunities that once seemed impossible. You begin walking with an authority that commands attention, not because you're the loudest in the room, but because you carry something different. This is the key to transformation. Understanding that you are not ordinary. You are not average. You were never meant to just get by in life. There is a force inside of you that is waiting to be released, and once it is, you will never be the same again. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Once you've activated this force, you have to learn how to walk in it daily. How do you sustain this momentum? How do you break through every barrier that tries to hold you back? How do you make sure this power doesn't just ignite for a moment, but fuels your destiny for a lifetime? Well, let's talk about that, because the next step is learning how to activate your inner strength for a purposeful life. Have you ever wondered why some people seem unstoppable? No matter what comes their way, setbacks, failures, challenges, they keep moving. They don't just survive, they thrive. They don't just endure, they conquer. What's the secret? Is it luck? Is it talent? No, it's something far more powerful. It's an inner strength that refuses to be defeated. And here's the truth, you have it too. But strength isn't just about muscles or physical endurance. It's something deeper. It's the ability to stand when everything around you is shaking. It's the power to keep going when quitting seems easier. It's the fire inside you that refuses to be put out. But here's the reality. Most people never activate it. They let fear silence them. They let failure stop them. They let opinions define them. And as a result, they live beneath their potential. But that is not how you were meant to live. You were created to be bold, to be strong, to be unstoppable. You were designed to face challenges and win, to rise above circumstances and lead. But here's the key. Inner strength is not automatic. It doesn't just appear when you need it. It must be activated. It must be trained. It must be developed. How do you activate it? It starts with what you believe about yourself. If you believe you are weak, you will act weak. If you believe you are limited, you will live limited. But when you begin to shift your mindset, when you start to see yourself as powerful, as capable, as destined for greatness, something changes. Your posture changes. Your decisions change. Your entire life begins to shift. But belief alone is not enough. Strength is built through resistance. Just like a muscle grows when it's challenged, your inner strength grows when you face opposition. Every obstacle you overcome, every challenge you push through, every time you refuse to quit, you are getting stronger. You're becoming someone who cannot be shaken, who cannot be stopped, who cannot be defeated. And here's the powerful part. Once your inner strength is activated, purpose becomes clear. Suddenly, you're no longer wandering through life trying to figure things out. You start moving with intention. You start making decisions with confidence. You stop waiting for opportunities and start creating them. This is what separates those who live with impact from those who simply exist. The difference is not talent. The difference is not background. The difference is inner strength. Those who have it change the world. Those who don't are controlled by it. But here's the question. Now that you've discovered this strength, what do you do with it? How do you take this power and apply it to every area of your life? How do you make sure this strength is not just something you feel, but something you use to elevate yourself to your destiny? Well, let's talk about that next. Because the next step is the key to living beyond limits. What if I told you that the greatest limits in your life are not the ones around you, but the ones within you? What if I told you that the barriers holding you back are not your circumstances, not your past, not even your resources, but your own mindset? Because here's the truth, limits are an illusion. They only exist as long as you believe in them. Look at history. The greatest achievers, the pioneers, the innovators, they were not born with more talent than you. They were not given special privileges. But they all had one thing in common. They refused to accept limits. When people told them it couldn't be done, they did it anyway. When they faced obstacles, they pushed through. When they had nothing to work with, they created something out of nothing. Why? Because they understood something most people don't. Limits are only real if you surrender to them. But let's get real. Most people don't break through their limits. They let fear tell them what's possible. They let past failures define their future. They let small thinking trap them in a life far below their potential. And here's the tragedy. They don't even realize they're doing it. Because limits don't always come as loud voices saying, you can't. Sometimes they come as a quiet whisper saying, maybe this is just the way things are. But that is lie. You were not designed to live trapped. You were not created to play small. You were meant to break barriers, to defy expectations, to live a life that inspires others to do the same. So how do you break free? How do you live beyond limits? It starts with a decision. You must decide that you will no longer be controlled by fear, that you will no longer accept impossible as an answer, that you will no longer let your past dictate your future. The moment you decide that you were meant for more, your entire life begins to shift. But decision alone is not enough. You must take action. You must step into the unknown. You must do what scares you, push past what's comfortable, and move even when you don't have all the answers. Because here's the secret. Every time you push beyond what you thought was your limit, you discover that there's more inside of you. More strength, more wisdom, more creativity, more power. And once you start living beyond limits, something incredible happens. Your vision expands. You begin to see possibilities where others see problems. You stop asking, can I do this? And start asking, how can I do this? You stop waiting for opportunities and start creating them. And that's when your life takes on a whole new level of purpose and impact. But here's the real question. Now that you've broken past limits, how do you sustain this power? How do you make sure you don't just have a moment of breakthrough, but a lifetime of unstoppable progress? Well, let's talk about that. because the next step is discovering the hidden energy source for success. Have you ever felt drained? Like you're pushing, striving, doing everything you can, but you still feel exhausted, empty, like something is missing. You see, success is not just about working hard, it's about being powered by the right source. Because no matter how talented you are, no matter how big your dreams may be, if you're running on the wrong energy, you will burn out before you ever reach your destiny. Look at the world around you. People are running, chasing, grinding, but many are running on empty. They have the skills, they have the vision, but they lack the inner fuel to keep going. That's why you see people rise and then suddenly fall. You see people start strong but never finish because they are trying to operate on human effort alone. And human effort has limits. But here's the good news. There is a greater source of energy, one that never runs out, one that keeps you moving even when the road gets tough, one that empowers you to break barriers, to defy expectations, to keep rising no matter what comes against you. This source is not external, it's within you. And when you tap into it, everything changes. Think about it. A car can be beautifully designed with the best engine, the finest technology, but without the right fuel, it's useless. It can't move, it can't function, it just sits there full of potential but going nowhere. The same is true for you. The question is, what are you running on? Are you running on motivation alone? Because motivation fades. Are you running on talent alone? Because talent without fuel leads to frustration. Are you running on the approval of others? Because when their opinions change, so will your confidence. You must connect to a deeper source, a source that fuels your purpose, strengthens your vision, and gives you the endurance to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. Because the truth is, success is not just about speed, it's about stamina. It's not just about how high you can go, but how long you can stay there. And that only happens when you are powered by something greater than emotions, greater than circumstances, greater than human strength. So how do you tap into this hidden energy? It starts with attunement. When you align your life with your true purpose, energy flows. When you stop chasing things that drain you and start pursuing what you were designed to do, you will find strength you never knew you had. Fatigue doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from doing things that don't align with your destiny. But when you walk in purpose, there is joy, there is passion, there is a fire that cannot be extinguished. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Once you are fueled by this energy, you don't just move. You move with authority. You walk into every room with confidence. You make decisions with clarity. You influence, you impact, you lead. But how do you develop that level of boldness? How do you step into every situation knowing you carry something different? Well, let's talk about that next. Because the next step is discovering how to walk in boldness and authority. Have you ever walked into a room and felt small? Have you ever been in a situation where you knew you had something to say, something to offer, but you held back? Maybe you question yourself, do I really belong here? Do I have what it takes? But here's the truth. You were never meant to shrink. You were designed to stand, to lead, to move with confidence and authority. But authority is not about being the loudest in the room. It's not about arrogance, control, or forcing people to listen. True authority is the ability to command an atmosphere without saying a word. It's a presence. It's a weight that you carry. It's an energy that makes people pay attention, not because of your title, not because of your status, but because of who you are. The world is full of people who talk, but very few who speak with authority. So, what makes the difference? It's not just knowledge. It's not just experience. It's identity. The people who walk in authority are the ones who know who they are. They are not waiting for validation. They are not seeking permission to be great. They don't second guess themselves. They don't apologize for taking up space. They understand that their presence alone carries power. But let's be honest, most people never walk in that authority. They shrink back, they play small, they silence themselves because of fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of what others might say. But fear is a lie, it's an illusion. The moment you stop giving fear permission to control you, something incredible happens. Your voice gets stronger. Your steps get bolder. Your decisions become clearer. You no longer hesitate. You move with purpose. So how do you develop this kind of boldness? How do you step into a room and own it? Without arrogance, without striving, without pretending to be someone you're not. It starts with belief. You must believe that you have something valuable to offer. You must believe that you have been placed here for a reason. You must believe that you are not an accident, not an afterthought, but a force to be reckoned with. And once you believe it, you must act on it. Boldness is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Speak up. Take the opportunity. Walk through the door. Refuse to back down when you know you're meant to stand. Because the more you operate in authority, the more natural it becomes. And here's the beautiful part. When you walk in true authority, you don't just impact your life, you impact others. People are drawn to confidence. People follow those who lead with certainty. The moment you stop questioning your power and start walking in it, you give others permission to do the same. But here's the real question. Now that you've discovered this boldness, how do you use it to influence and transform the world around you? How do you take this authority and turn it into lasting impact? Well, let's talk about that next, because the next step is learning how to be a catalyst for change. What if I told you that you were never meant to just exist, that you were never meant to just go through the motions, blend in, and live an average life? You were designed to be a catalyst, to shift atmospheres, to influence environments, to be the kind of person that when you walk into a room, things change. But here's the truth. Most people never step into that power. They wait. They wait for permission. They wait for the perfect moment. They wait for someone else to lead the way. And as they wait, time passes, opportunities slip away, and the impact they were meant to make never happens. Because here's the reality. Change doesn't wait. Transformation doesn't wait. If you want to be a catalyst, you must decide to move. But what does it mean to be a catalyst? It means you don't just accept things as they are, you challenge them. You didn't just adapt to the world around you, you shape it. A catalyst doesn't sit on the sidelines. A catalyst steps into situations with boldness, with vision, with a determination to make a difference. A catalyst refuses to let fear, doubt, or the opinions of others keep them silent. But let's be honest, stepping into this role isn't always easy. It requires courage. It requires a mindset shift. Because the moment you decide to be a force for change, you will face resistance. People will question you. Some will misunderstand you. Others may even oppose you. But here's the key. You cannot be moved by that. A catalyst doesn't need approval. A catalyst doesn't need validation. A catalyst simply knows, I was sent here to make a difference. But let's go deeper. Being a catalyst isn't just about speaking out. It's about action. It's about results. It's about stepping into problems and bringing solutions. Anyone can complain. Anyone can point out what's wrong. But a catalyst says, how can I fix this? A catalyst is someone who takes responsibility, not just for their own life, but for the world around them. And here's the secret. Once you embrace this mindset, you become unstoppable, because the world is drawn to people who bring solutions. Leaders rise when they solve problems. Influences emerge when they refuse to accept things as they are. The moment you decide to be that kind of person, doors begin to open. Opportunities find you. People look to you for answers. But here's the question. How do you sustain this level of impact? How do you make sure you don't just create a moment of change, but a movement? How do you turn your influence into something that lasts for generations? Well, let's talk about that next. Because the next step is discovering how to leave a lasting legacy. What will the world remember about you when you're gone? Have you ever thought about that? Not just the things you owned, not the job you worked, not even the titles you carried, but the impact you made. Because here's the truth. You were not meant to just live and die. You were meant to leave something behind. But most people never think about legacy. They think about success. They think about achievements. They think about making a name for themselves. But legacy is bigger than success. Legacy is not about what you accomplish. It's about what you build that outlives you. The question is, will what you're doing right now matter in the next generation? Will it still stand when you're no longer here? Because if your life is only about you, then when you're gone, it's over. But when you build something greater than yourself, your influence never dies. Look at history. The people who changed the world were not necessarily the richest, the most famous, or the most talented. They were the ones who created something that outlived them. They poured into others. They invested in the future. They didn't just chase success, they built legacy. Because legacy is not about what you take, it's about what you give. But let's be real, most people don't think long term. They focus on the now. They focus on getting ahead, making money, building their own name. But the problem with that mindset is that it ends with you. And that's why so many people live a life of temporary success but leave no lasting impact. Because real legacy is about what you deposit into others. It's about what you pass on. It's about how many lives you elevate, how many people you inspire, how many generations you change. So how do you build a legacy? It starts with purpose. If you live your life chasing things that don't matter, you will waste your time. But when you live with purpose, everything you do becomes intentional. Your words, your actions, your choices, they all begin to create something bigger than you. You must decide today that you will not just live for yourself, but for those who come after you. But here's the key. Legacy is not built overnight. It's built in the small moments. It's built in the way you treat people. It's built in the wisdom you pass down. It's built in the courage to stand for something when others won't. Because every great legacy starts with one person who decides to be different. And once you start thinking legacy, your entire perspective changes. You stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what can I give? You stop focusing on personal gain and start focusing on generational impact. And that's when you truly step into greatness. But here's the challenge. How do you ensure your legacy isn't just a memory, but a movement? How do you make sure what you've built continues to grow, expand, and transform the future? Well, let's talk about that next. Because the next step is learning how to empower others to carry the vision forward. What happens when you're no longer here? What happens to the vision, the mission, the impact you've created? Because real success is not just about what you accomplish, it's about how many people you empower to continue the work. The greatest leaders, the greatest influencers, the greatest world changers don't just build something for themselves, they raise up others to carry the vision forward. But here's the problem. Too many people hold on too tight. They build, they achieve, they create, but they never teach. They never train. They never pour into others. And when they are gone, so is their impact. Because if your vision dies with you, then you didn't build a legacy. You just had a moment. Think about it. Everything in life is designed to continue. Trees drop seeds so the next generation of trees can grow. Rivers flow into oceans, keeping the waters moving. Even the sun doesn't shine just for one day. It rises again and again. So why would your purpose be any different? Why would you spend your life building something only for it to end when you're no longer here? If you want your vision to last, you must invest in people. You must find those who believe in the mission, those who are willing to learn, those who are hungry to grow, and you must train them. Because here's the truth. True leadership is not about control, it's about empowerment. It's about giving others the tools, the wisdom, and the confidence to step up and continue the work. But let's be real. Empowering others is not always easy. It requires patience. It requires letting go of ego. It requires trusting that even if they don't do things exactly like you, the vision is still moving forward, because the goal is not to create clones of yourself. The goal is to raise up leaders who bring their own strengths, their own ideas, their own fire to take the vision to places you could never reach. And here's the key. You don't wait until the end of your journey to start empowering others. You do it now. You start mentoring. You start teaching. You start pouring into the next generation while you're still here to guide them. Because the sooner you start, the stronger the foundation becomes. And when the time comes for you to step aside, you don't leave a void, you leave a movement. And when you do this, something powerful happens. Your influence multiplies. It spreads. It expands beyond what you could have ever done alone. Because leadership is never about just one person. It's about creating a system of impact that continues, grows, and evolves long after you're gone. But here's the final question. Once you've empowered others, once you've created this unstoppable movement, how do you ensure that it continues to thrive for generations to come? How do you make sure that what you've built doesn't just survive, but keeps expanding, keeps breaking barriers, keeps changing lives? Well, let's talk about that next, because the last step is discovering how to sustain a movement that never dies. What you build is only as strong as its foundation. What you start is only as powerful as its ability to continue. Because success is not about reaching the top, it's about making sure what you've built keeps growing, keeps expanding, keeps impacting lives long after you're gone. Too many great visions have died, not because they weren't powerful, not because they weren't needed, but because they weren't sustained. They started strong, but they weren't structured to last. They had passion, but no strategy. They had momentum, but no foundation. And so when the leader stepped away, when the challenges came, when the excitement faded, everything collapsed. But that doesn't have to be your story. If you want your vision to outlive you, you must build it to last. You must create a system, a structure, a culture that doesn't depend on one person, but can survive, grow, and adapt through generations. Because anything that is built solely around you is at risk the moment you are no longer there. But when you build something bigger than yourself, something rooted in a clear purpose, something that has the power to train and raise up new leaders, then it becomes unstoppable. But sustainability doesn't happen by accident. It requires intention. It requires strategy. You must think beyond the now. You must ask yourself, what happens next? Who carries the torch? How do they keep the fire burning? What values must remain unchanged and what must evolve? Because if you don't plan for the future, you are planning for failure. And here's the key. Sustainability is not about perfection, it's about continuity. The movement you start may look different in the next generation. It may take new forms, new methods, new expressions, but the core of it, the heart of it, must remain the same. That's why great leaders don't just teach skills, they teach principles. They don't just create followers, they create thinkers. They don't just give instructions, they give vision. Because when people understand the why behind the movement, they will find new ways to keep it alive. And when this happens, your impact becomes timeless. And it doesn't just last for a season, it shapes history. It doesn't just reach a few, it touches multitudes. Because true success is not in what you accomplish alone, it's in what continues because of you. So here's the final challenge. What will you do with what you've heard? Will you just listen? Will you just be inspired for a moment? Or will you take action? Because the world doesn't need more dreamers who never move. The world needs builders. The world needs leaders. The world needs people who are willing to step up, take ownership, and create something that will outlive them. Your time is now. Your opportunity is here. The question is, what will you do with it?